Here we are, folks. 5-1. This is where shit gets real. This is where shit gets real. So, Tracy, 5-1.
Let's go, Tracy.
Let's go.
Ta-da! All right. So I'm gonna start off my five, taking a page from CC's book, and also so I subscribe. I get every month. I get these missions, these challenges from this very groovy site. It's called the Cinenauts. I call them the Cinemanauts, but it's really the Cinenauts. So, in honor of the Cinenauts, who tends to they ask you to do things like, watch a black and white movie, do a film journal, see how you feel about film and that kind of vibe. I have two films that did not come out in 2024. All right, 2024, but they are brilliant. And one of them, I kind of was like, well, I am clearly a noob because I have watched bits and pieces of this film, but I never really sat down to it. So I'm going to start with number 5. Number 5 being Ingmar Bergman's The Seventh Seal.
Finally, you watched that.
Finally.
It's currently in my collection because I own the Blu-ray for it. Criterion Collection. Love that film.
Classic of classics.
Yes, classic of classics. Love that film. Love it. Yeah.
I mean, I sat I was like, I am a noob. Like, I mean, like I know Bergman and I appreciate, but like there are things that I still haven't actually gotten into, and like. You grow up, like for me, growing up like in religion and that kind of stuff, you have the idea of the seventh seal and Revelations and how it opens up. And even watching this film, and you're like the idea of death and the chess match between him and the knight Max von Sydow, there are bits and things in there that even creeps into like modern pop culture. Like I immediately go back to like Lost. There's a whole thing in season 5 and season 6 of Lost where you actually meet Jacob and the man in black who is actually the smoke monster, and there's a chess game that constantly gets played between them and some of the cast members. And I looked at that and I was like, this is freaking brilliant. And therefore I recommend everyone watching that. Number 4, in keeping with this kind of vibe, number 4 is a movie from and I hope I haven't completely bastardized the man's name, but Juzo Itami. Juzo Itami had this movie in 1987, I think it was, Tampopo.
And
Tampopo,
Right.
Tampopo is absolutely, it's to say Tampopo is delicious is both funny and an understatement. So you have this woman. Her name is Tampopo, and she has like this ramen shop, but she does not it's like mediocre ramen. And this truck driver, she's there, she's a single mother, and this truck driver comes in and basically trains her to like bring up her ramen game, but also there's another plot that plays into the film, and like the film starts off there with like the first scene you see of there's like this kind of very well-dressed gangster coming into a cinema, and then he talks to us, and then it goes. There's a whole vibe with Tampopo, and yes, there is a little bit of sexy time in there, but like things dipping into cream, and it's just so much heights. But it is so delicious, and it is funny, and it is broadening. And I feel like I went afterwards and checked out a few other pieces of work and material that he has. There's another film that he has there. I think it's called A Taxing Woman. And I looked at the poster for A Taxing Woman, and I was like, oh, this looks like the Challengers poster, even though the Challengers poster is not necessarily the most original thing. Like you can see where the people pulled things from these directors because of reasons and that kind of stuff. Star Wars, for crying out loud, is summarized in space. But Tampopo, I recommend. I legitimately recommend watching Juzo Itami's 1987 classic Tampopo. So that for me starts off my top 5. The Seventh Seal by Ingmar Bergman, and number 4 Tampopo. So having done that, let's go into stuff that came out actually in 2024. And number 3 is We Live in Time, Florence Pugh.
Okay.
Andrew Garfield.
I did not see this.
No.
This came out. So here's the thing, and I'll just stop here and say this kind of something. If by any chance there is a Hollywood producer listening to this, or a studio head or somebody like that, you see this dotishness where good movies no longer seem to have an international release date. It's just a limited theatrical run so that it can go on to the designated streaming service that already is there. I can't. This is a movie that needed to be seen on the big screen. This is a movie that I felt like should have been enjoyed at a local, art house cinema, or like a local cinema screen that I could sit down and watch it. You have Andrew Garfield, who let me just put this out there, he is more than the sum of his Spider-Man parts, for those people who only know from Spider-Man, obviously, and Florence Pugh. And it's a love story between these two people set with a backdrop of death, because she has an illness, and how do you navigate that? And she's also a chef. It's it's heartwarming, it's devastating, it is good. It is one of those films that you kind of look at and you'd be like, I would like more of this, please. And I would like it to get as much rap and noise as I don't know, some random new pop culture movie that will come out at some point in time. So that's my number 3. We live in time. Number 2 is Emilia Pérez. Emilia Pérez is one of those, again, that I call delicious. If you've heard me talk about it before, I like this story. It is very Shakespearean. It is legitimately very Shakespearean. Even towards the end, the last few shots, how the movie ended and that kind of stuff, I was like, this is brilliant. And the heights for me with Emilia Pérez was, I queued it up and I said, I'll just watch. Let me see what this is. Just let me get 10 minutes out of this to see what this really is about. Because the only thing I knew of it was the Abla song, as the actual name is El Mal or Lamal. That is the one scene where Rita, which is Zoe Saldana's character, does the dance sequence on top of the tables and that kind of stuff in the banquet. And that was the only thing that I knew about it. I did not really go and read like the backstory or anything of the sort. I saw that, I felt it, and I said, okay, let me just take a little bit of it. Sat down and watch the whole thing. I was like, oh my God, like when she comes back into Rita's life, now as Emilia Pérez, I was like, what are you trying to do? You're going to try and like regain your gangster empire? How are you going to play this out? No, you have a different mission now. That movie was absolutely glorious. And even in terms of our Golden Globes or Critics' Choice or even the Oscars, in terms of a race, I can see how Saldana and how oh God, my girl, I can't remember her name right now. I'm seeing her in my face. Selena.
Is Carla? I forgot the surname. But Carla something.
Carla, Zoe, and Selena.
Yeah.
Selena could legitimately get like walk away with this, because even though her part was small, because she plays Manita's wife in the story, even though her part was relatively small, I still felt like a different Selena that I even like watching her Only Murders in the Building. It's a different kind of Selena, and I liked it. I very much liked it. So that is my number 2 film, and I had to get a little bit of water in for this one. My number 1 film for 2024. Surprising absolutely no one in this room is Kraven the Hunter. No.
Not Kraven. Come on, man.
Nah, I kind of had to do that.
I died.
Surprising absolutely no one. Kraven, of course. I mean, what else?
Yeah, it's a masterpiece.
But it literally is. Oh my God. But with this number 1 film, I have been walking around even up to this morning being like, let us be glad, let us be grateful. Like, we can't sing in the damn cinema. And local cinema chains did not do a sing along, but the soundtrack and the film. So Wicked is my number one film of 2024. Now, let me give you a quick thing here. I have been living in Wicked for a good ass while. I have not had the pleasure of watching it on West End, in a West End theater, or on Broadway or off Broadway. The first time that I even came to the original cast was one through Rent, which is for Idina Menzel. And then what was it? I think it was Pushing Daisies. Kristen Chenoweth was in Pushing Daisies on one of those shows, and I saw the two of them. And then I got a backstory about about Wicked, and got into the whole thing with Wicked. I have the original soundtrack with with Kristen and Idina, or as she's also known, the wickedly talented Adele Gazim. You know, like this soundtrack and this Broadway show. And then if you go up on YouTube, there's always like you can legitimately go up on YouTube and see clips from like high quality clips to somebody with a cell phone have clips of all the different Elphabas, like on all the different Glindas doing their thing. This is a 20-something year old Broadway production. I am telling you all now, slight spoilers. Everybody you know from The Wizard of Oz, except for Dorothy, you have already met at Shiz University. It is so wildly brilliant. This film, like from a fan perspective or anything of the sort, you really just wanted something that was serviceable. I have, like I said, I've lived in the soundtrack and like the old soundtrack, the original soundtrack with the original cast. And so you hear that they're going to do something that is going to be like big and it's going to be great. And the guy who did In the Heights is coming back. In the Heights and Crazy Rich Asians, he's coming back and he's going to be doing this movie. This sounds like it could be fun. But just make it serviceable, make it good, make it a vibe. This did more than just making it serviceable. This exceeded so many expectations. Even the idea of having Ariana as Glinda, like Ariana tells everybody, you know, she saw it when she was 10 years old. I am jealous. She saw it when she was 10 years old and did like a behind this backstage and like met the original cast and that kind of stuff. Cynthia saw this stage production when she was 25. She took herself out on like her own date kind of something and just carried herself to see it. So these two actresses have been living in this production like a lot of theater people, and seeing how they act, how they acted well alongside each other, because Wicked is the story of, it is Elphaba's story. It is the story of the Wicked Witch of the West, who, random footnote, her name is Elphaba because of L. Frank Baum. So like when Gregory Maguire was making the actual novel Wicked, that he, like, because the Wicked Witch didn't have a name, she was just the Wicked Witch, but he needed to come up with a name, and the name that he settled on was Elphaba for L. Frank Baum. So you get that now she's an actual person. So that's how we get Elphaba. And seeing Elphaba's journey here in this film and seeing Glinda into Glinda's journey in the film, it's something that I feel is deeply resonant. It is something in the current political and social climate that you kind of have, not just, you know, in one particular territory, but around the world. It feels like if it is like, oh, very spot on with what is happening now. The idea of like the animals can also represent like immigrants and how people treat you know, like that kind of vibe. Like
marginalized people, yeah.
You can pull your own place from it. And I will say that there is both a relief and also a little bit of what will part two bring, because one, we know that they're going to be doing like a couple new songs that will come to it. But given the height and the momentum that Wicked Part 1 did, Wicked for Good, which is the name that they're going with for part 2, is going to be really something. If you loved watching Elphaba like come into her own, you will be astounded by like how she operates. Because I'm not going to go into like spoiler territory, but like when she starts hitting you with Ella Kanaman Naman and starts singing from the Grimoire, and like this is why she decides to go full Wicked, and like what was going on with Glinda at that particular time, and like who becomes the Scarecrow and who is the Tin Man, and why Nessa, like why a house falls on Nessa. Like there's a whole thing that is going to be playing out there, and I can't wait to see how part 2. I am excited. I'm excited for like three films in particular: Superman, Fantastic Four, and of course Wicked Part 2. And I thoroughly believe that this is going to be vibes. And I will also throw in there, if you are listening and you're not necessarily like, oh, it's a musical, I don't know if I really need to see a musical, think of it as, and this might sound weird, but think of it as X-Men First Class meets Mean Girls, that kind of vibe, where like Elphaba is young Magneto in terms of like had a hard life and does not really trust people and has all this great power. And you also have Charles, who came from a life of privilege and wants to be part of the system, and that kind of vibe you can almost pull from there. It's a very rough way of saying it, but if you haven't given musicals a try, that is how I would put it to you. And also, if you are planning on giving your 12-year-old child the Wicked novel, don't. All right, the Wicked novel itself is like a lot darker, and like Wicked the novel of itself delves into a real, like, the socio-economic political randomness that was going on there in Oz. Like the animals that are there, they were there. Like people had, like the animals had like a bigger role. Let's just put it that way. The animals had a bigger role, and you got to see a lot more in terms of how Glinda and Elphaba operates. But when you come to the Broadway musical, like when Stephen Schwartz and Ruby, I can't remember her name right now, but when they all decided to do the actual Broadway musical, it still has its dark elements, but it's a Broadway musical and it's light. And okay, like in the book, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, but in the book, I think Madame Morrible gets killed intentionally, whereas in the Broadway story, Madame Morrible goes to jail. Like you'll see why she eventually goes to jail, and like so there are turns and twists. And I only say that so that people don't go, it's weird to see people on the internet being like, I bought Wicked for my 16-year-old or my 15-year-old or my 12-year-old book, and now it's so dark. I didn't think it was going to be like this. Come on, just go and do a little research before you do anything else. So that is that. But Wicked remains one of my absolute favorite musicals and one of my absolute favorite films. I have this soundtrack. I have the original cast recording soundtrack. I am definitely getting, when it comes out on digital, the full sing-along, and I will be getting the Blu-ray because physical media is important.
Hells yeah.
Wicked is, Wicked is the best film of 2024 as signed by Tracy Hutchings.
Lovely. Ricardo, 5-1.
Yo. Right. So I have a tie for number 5. 2 films.
Mm-hmm.
Take a tie for number 5. Challengers.
Aye.
Right. And Saturday Night.
Ooh, still haven't seen Saturday Night, but yeah.
Yeah.
Go on.
Doug, these both films, they really work for what they were trying to do and thing. And yeah, I couldn't really like fit them. They were in the top 10, but like I couldn't fit thing, and I had something else had to be top 10, and I didn't want to put out 11. And I was like, yeah, one of these like kind of equal for me in many ways in their own way. Right, and just the legacy of time and how these things do. If one might slightly get the edge, it might be Challengers, but like Saturday Night was such an interesting like conceit in terms of how they did it. And I dug the hell out of both of them, kind of more or less equally, all things considered. Number 4, Conclave.
Nice.
It was hard.
Mm-hmm.
Great story. Ray Fiennes cooked. we call him oh gosh.
Edward Berger. No. Stanley Tucci.
Stanley Tucci, yeah.
Yeah.
Tucci hard. They were great. People come together. This was excellent. This just really, really worked for me.
Again, that cinematography though, wow. Just wow.
Real hard. Number 3. This stuck with me for the year. Even though it had a kind of one problem with it, but I find it stuck with me what it's trying to do. I had one small nitpick, but that was more a production thing. And one small issue with the script, but that wasn't a big deal. The rest of it really worked for me. Late Night with the Devil.
Oh, still haven't seen it, but yeah. Great pick.
Really?
Great pick. I know, right?
Okay.
Yeah. That's
right.
still on my to watch list, right? But great pick.
I don't know, this really stuck with me. This is excellent. Just how they just piece it and flow together and just everything just comes together so well. All things considered and how they just everything bounces off the ground. And my boy, what's his name, boy? Dotman,
Is Dotman or Polka Dot Man?
Polka Dot Man, right?
Polka Dot Man, right.
Polka Dot Man.
Right.
David, the actor is David Desmalchian.
Desmalchian, right. He just had a great look to everything and how he's just reactions, but then he playing funny and it's this kind of proto Conan O'Brien kind of thing he doing, but when the time for it to get horrifying, it really gets scary and disturbing. And this was just excellent. It does really, really solid stuff in my opinion. I dug the hell out of this. Number 2, boy, the TV show, loosely based on it, well, derived from it, was great. One of my favorites of the year. And this was hard too. And just seeing that flag fluttering on that sandworm.
Yeah.
They're cooking. Dune Part 2.
Nice.
This was hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this was hard. This man, he deals with it.
Villeneuve for best director, please. For best director, please.
He did great stuff. He did I think this is his movie that actually did really well for the first time. I think this is his first big movie. I think so. He deserved it, and this is just really excellent stuff. Great arc. They tweak a couple things that change things and make it work. But it's good changes, and this was just excellent. Just really, really good stuff. And number 1.
Yeah, I know it is. Go on.
I can't believe it. As I say, this girl, this director, she matches my freak, as they say.
Yeah.
Do not yuck my yum. This was my yum. This is exactly the kind of movie that has worked for me. Number 1 for the year, The Substance.
Oh yeah. Yep.
This shit was so wild and so insane, and it just reminded me of movies that I like a lot, and it just so much of it works. This shit was just hard. This had me just cracking up, but it was legit terrified at times. The right type of gross out, but the right type of funny, and just everything just come together so well. And then there's a final shot just so depressing, but it's so good at the same time.
Brilliant, it's brilliant.
Yeah, so brilliant. But then great, just great also. And then, but it deeper than you think it is. Great social commentary. Everything they're talking about, or trying to say, and everything just comes together so goddamn well and really, really well done. Number 1 for the year for me. Great performances. Just a really, really fantastic story. And just damn entertainment. It just had me cracking up the entire time, but really engrossing and engaging for the year. So number 1 for the year, The Substance. Loved it.
Yeah, gross and engrossing. I think that's the best term to use for a film like this, right? Yeah.
Right.
All right. So of course I will save my top 5 for last, right? But yes, CC, your.
Sorry. Before I should mention this before we continue. I just had three quick little classic movies just to reference off a CC bounce off a CC. Jacob's Ladder.
Oh, still haven't seen that.
Ooh, yeah.
Classic.
Yeah.
Purple Noon.
Also, same thing. Still haven't seen it. Yep.
Yeah. I watched that movie for its cinematography. I want to make a movie that look like that. And this is a classic, a great movie. I wanted to do something like this. Circle of Deceit. Strong recommend. 1981. Lebanon. War thing. If you want to reference, if you like war photography stuff and covering a war. Unlike Civil War, which I don't really work for me. This really works for me. But Civil War still what I mentioned.
Right.
Here's the thing with Civil War.
I do remember. Sorry to cut you. I do remember you mentioning Circle of Deceit in our review of Civil War. I remember you talking about it.
Here's the thing with Civil War. I'll tell you the problem with Civil War. Civil War is like the American is like the movie equivalent of about American politics in the same way. Remember, it have this weird Italian pop song that the song like English, but it's not English. It's a guy who does an Italian pop song, and it just kind of
I
incoherent.
know the one you're talking about.
It's the same kind of incoherence. It's the same kind of incoherence. When you actually like try to understand what you're trying to say, it don't make a lick of sense. But it is sung like it's English, and it's sung like a pop song, and it does the tones. And I suppose like good filmmaking does that. Like it's more about vibes over like facts. Like is that right? We live in our vibes. Like everything is vibes. This last election was vibes. Everything is vibes. But that is what this felt like to me. That's why Civil War didn't really work for me. It doesn't gel together. This movie works. So DC, that is what you had to do. Anyway, that's me. Moving on.
All right. So CC 5-1.
5-1. And as a little nod to the good Sir Tracy, Deadline is reporting that Wicked has officially become the #1 stage musical adaptation ever at the global box office.
Yes.
So little nod there to my guy. But now top 5, and I don't know. I looking back on previous years, I always feel like my top 5 films are always I don't know. Like every year, whenever I make this list, there's always at least a few films that are kind of, I'm not the same person I was 1 movie ago. And somehow my top 5 are all very much in that camp. But getting into it. As I mentioned in my worst list, a kind of little deep dive I fell down this year was because I watched Hotel Rwanda for the first time, and I kind of got curious and discovered that there's a surprising number of movies about the Rwandan genocide, and this is the 20th anniversary of that particular tragedy. And so I was kind of curious what the worst and best films in that category were. So, I mean, as I mentioned in my worst list, the 2 worst, you have Shooting Dogs and you have Shake Hands with the Devil. Hotel Rwanda is kind of in the middle, but the one that is the best, and the film that I am still thinking about after seeing it months ago, is from 2005, Raoul Peck's Sometimes in April. How do I put this? It's not just a good movie because it manages to address all the problems that I think even films like Hotel Rwanda managed to struggle with talking about this particular event, where there's like, where a lot of weaker films are more interested in the white onlookers than on the Rwandans themselves. There's a lot of flattening of the simplicity of the complexity of the events into something more simple and digestible. Sometimes in April honestly, it is a heartbreaking movie, but it is also beautiful. The film follows 2 brothers, both Hutu brothers, one of whom is married to a Tutsi woman. The other one is deep in the Hutu power movement and actually works at the radio station that broadcasts all of the xenophobic propaganda and everything. And the film is told both in the present and in flashback. In the present, the brother, the Idris Elba brother, is just traveling to see his other brother, who is actually being held and is being tried for war crimes and for his part in the genocide, because his brother, the brother, knows the Idris Elba's character during the chaos of the genocide entrusted his wife and kids to his brother, trying to get them to safety, and he never saw them again. So now his brother is now finally ready to tell him what happened. And because of this, it's bringing up all his memories of that April when, that April when everything started. And the film has the rich drama of any of the best, sweeping historical narratives. It's got the drama of something like the novel Tale of Two Cities or the film Dr. Zhivago or any of this other stuff. It's got that. It's a harsh movie. It does not shirk away from the violence. It portrays it in a very matter-of-fact way. And there's a genuine sense of, there's just so much that this film does right, not just talking about this subject, but also in its own right being a profound meditation on inhumanity, on tragedy, on all this different stuff. And by the end of it, first of all, I'm absolutely excited. I haven't actually seen any Raoul Peck movies before. I know I need to see I Am Not Your Negro and Lumumba, but this is, as far as the introduction goes, cannot be excited to watch more of this man. But no, and it's just, I cannot recommend this movie enough, and I cannot begin to explain just how, when it's done and in the months afterwards, the note it leaves you on, you're still thinking about it. Like it's like that. It's that film you just can't get out of your mind. Speaking of films you can't get out of your mind, my number 4 needs a little bit of explanation because technically the film came out in 2011. The film was not made in 2011 or 2010. This particular film that I'm going to discuss began production in, I want to, let me double check my notes here. The film began production in 1988 and was only completed in 2011. And the animator who worked on it, was constantly working on it in the background whenever he got funding while he made other projects, and only completed it in 2011 and released it. The film is the Hungarian animated epic, and I do mean epic in the truest classical sense of the word, The Tragedy of Man. To explain, so The Tragedy of Man is based on a play of the same name. It's a classic Hungarian play where essentially what happens is Adam and Eve have been kicked out of Eden, and Satan then arrives and tries to convince them, essentially tries to convince Adam that life is not worth living. He's like, you've been kicked out. Like, essentially, he's like, you've been kicked out of Eden. Everything from here is just going to get worse. You may as well crawl under a rock and die. And Adam is like, nah, we will continue, we'll persevere. And then so to try and convince Adam to give up, Satan takes him into the future and shows him at several different key historical moments the future of humanity. And it becomes this really fascinating philosophical text as Adam and Satan travel through time, with Adam trying to say like, look at all that my descendants are going to accomplish and pull off, and all the triumph. And Satan goes, yes, but then look at all the bloodshed and the trauma and the terror and all of the awful things that are going to happen. Like, look how much evil you will bring upon the world. Would not be better to just give up? The film, you have to understand, the Beatles movie Yellow Submarine was apparently huge behind the Iron Curtain, like way more influential. And that kind of like psychedelic animation style was something that a lot of Soviet animators really got into.
Right.
And except Furious, that particular style is like definitely how this is a surreal, strange, like the opening shots, like you see space and God is realized as like the stars swirling until they form these two eyes swirling in the vastness of space that you can barely able to look at, with and then like each of the different historical periods has a slightly different animation style. Certain parts of this are hand drawn, but certain parts are digital. As I said, he worked on this segment by segment for like 30 years. And it's really interesting because in the middle of that, so the Iron Curtain came down, the Soviet Union collapsed. And so he kind of incorporates some of that into the work as well. And you see certain allusions to that kind of that post-Soviet artist looking back and being like, we were supposed to create this new world order, this utopia, and yet we destroyed everything. And this is also like the dialogue. I mean, obviously it's Hungarian with subtitles, but the dialogue is also really beautiful and poetic. It's just an absolutely... It's a maximalist movie. It's thematically and stylistically overwhelming. It's the kind of movie that you kind of have to watch a couple, and I don't often say this, but it's the kind of movie you have to kind of watch a couple times to get the true impact of it. Not because certain things only click with you, because it's presenting you so much information that there are certain parts that will only achieve that you'll only achieve later. So yeah, I am not the same person I was before seeing Tragedy of Man, and I am still in awe. Like, there's just random moments and like lines and everything that will just pop into my head randomly ever since I saw it. So yeah, Tragedy of Man's my number 4. Now, getting into the category I like to call CC should have seen this movie when they came out, and now they've seen it and realized what they missed out on in the first place. But number 3 from 2020 is Minari. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, we covered it back in 2020. Yeah.
Oh yeah, exactly. And I remember listening to your review and being like, oh, yeah, that sounds pretty good. I need to go check that out. And then, like, for whatever reason, I wasn't able to. And then finally this year, no, I remember it's because the director was making Twisters, and I was like, oh, okay. So I finally have an excuse to go back and watch Minari. And then I watched it and I said, this is great. Like, this is like, it's good in that kind of. I don't often watch a lot of media and have like direct connections to my own experiences. It's not often that I watch things, but I cannot think of a movie. I mean, there's a special club that I'm adding this movie to of films that kind of really get into the American immigrant experience and kind of that thing of like, we are trying to join this culture. We're trying to be part of this culture, but we have our own values and our own heritage and our own things. And there's a tension there. There's a push-pull. There's all this other kind of stuff there. And like, I think The Parents represents the two sides of that dichotomy really, really well. It's also just a beautiful pastoral movie, like the way it's shot and the kind of the sense, like there's just so much about it that's just beautifully composed. And yeah, this kind of drama is really delightful to like to engage with. And so like, yeah, no, Minari, should have seen it in theaters when it came out, but better late than never. Absolutely fantastic. Speaking of better late than never, I don't even remember how I missed this movie when it came out. Like, I remember I kept meaning to see it, and then I don't even remember how I missed seeing it. But this was a one from last year that I really, really wanted to see, and I'm so glad I got to see it. But I'm, again, better late than never. But sad I didn't get to see it in theaters. Probably need to get into the habit of watching it on a more regular basis, because one of the best Christmas movies I've seen in a hot minute, this is The Holdovers.
Nice.
2023.
Love that film. Loved it.
Finally,
Very good.
finally got around to The Holdovers, and I don't know where to be. It's like discovering this lost Hal Ashby Christmas movie. You know what I mean? Like it's like there's this absolute. It's got that kind of 70s. This is kind of what people are like. This is some of the more difficult parts of being human and all this stuff in it that I really appreciate. It's one of the most intentionally crafted movies I've seen in a long time. Like, there's so much, like, I can't remember which company it is, but there's one film company in the opening credits that they designed what like a 70s style logo would have looked like, which I thought was like a really cool touch. But just beyond that, the story of it is so simple, but like the details are so great. All three of the Saints performances are absolutely amazing. It is funny. I've not laughed at a Christmas movie that hard since maybe the first time I ever saw A Christmas Story. Like, it is a hilarious, absolutely hilarious movie. And then we'll whip around to be the saddest film you've ever seen. And then we'll be the most hopeful film. Like, the absolute carnival ride whiplash that I had with The Holdovers was absolutely fantastic, where you're just like minding your own business. And like, 1 minute you're laughing your ass off. And then in the same scene, you will be absolutely crying. Also, just I don't know. There's just so much about the movie that I'm absolutely like, it's fantastic, and it's absolutely I need to get a copy so I can kind of make it something I can watch every year at Christmas time, because it is just fantastic. But finally, 5 honorable mentions and 14 great movies later, we finally get to the film that I saw in 2024 that I still thinking about, still made me excited about the filmmaker, that I will not stop recommending to people who didn't see it when it came out, like trying to get people to see it, and that I cannot stop thinking about all the different ideas it presented me with. And that, of course, is, shout out to Ricardo for mentioning this earlier, the Bikeriders.
Nice.
First of all, I'm so happy that the Bikeriders exists. Again, I mentioned this in my review, but there was that whole weird period where like Searchlight dropped the movie, and we were not sure if it was going to get released. And then and then Focus and Universal picked it up, and it feels like the kind of movie that's going to get slept on. Like, I really am skeptical whether or not there's going to be any kind of serious Oscar contention for it. But it's so good. It is so good. I'm so upset at how just all of like this absolute not like surgical knife taken to kind of masculine psyche, but then also this picture this almost documentary look at a specific time and period in history and like a particular culture and kind of the ways in which that particular culture changed and developed over a very short space of time. The actors in this are all comedians. This is not just the best film one of the best performances I've seen yet from Austin Butler. Shout out to his performance in Dune for being the other big performance I've seen him for in this year. He's got a promising career ahead of him. But then, like, this was the movie that reminded me that I will love this movie for being the movie that reminded me that Tom Hardy is a really good actor. Like, I forgot. I'm embarrassed to say it, but I had forgotten how good Tom Hardy is when he's on his end game, because it's been a hot minute since I saw a new Tom Hardy movie. Like, he made those 3 Venom movies. He was also in Josh Trank's Capone movie, and he was trying in that one, but he's still dealing with Josh Trank. It's been a hot minute since I saw a Tom Hardy performance that really blew me away. And watching the Bikeriders, I was like, oh yeah, this is why Tom Hardy at a couple times has been one of my favorite actors working at the moment. Like, I'm so just in love with it. So yeah, no. And given that, like, all these different critics and editors keep writing think pieces about how Hollywood doesn't make adult dramas anymore, and I'm like, well, here's a movie that would have been perfectly at home at any particular, like, at any of the different times where, like, these kind of adult dramas, like, you could draw comparisons to things like Mask from the 80s is one that kind of leaps to mind. The Peter Bogdanovich movie is like something I could, like, compare it to. But yeah, I'm so happy this film exists. I'm so happy that it is as good as it is. And of the films that I saw in 2024, it was, once you put all the other caveats aside, this is probably the one that I come back to the most.
All right. So I have a little discussion I have to make as well, right? But that'll be near the end, right? So my top 5 to 1. Number 5, Dahomey, or Dahomey, right? I think it's Dahomey. I think that's how you pronounce it, right? But yeah, calling this right now best documentary of this year, though. And I haven't seen much, but this was the best that I have seen, right? Just such a fascinating film. The way how it touches on the idea of, basically it just involves these 26 African artifacts that was stolen, right, during the times of slavery, from what is now known as, Benin, right? So it was during the time when there was this kingdom called Dahomey, right? And yeah, they were stolen and pretty much shipped to France, right? Literally centuries later now, just out of the blue, the government of France just decided, here, let's ship these things back to Benin, right? And out of that spawns these really, like, fascinating, very thought-provoking conversations about, the political or social or cultural implications behind all of this, right? And yeah, it was just such a superbly made film, right? And the most shocking thing about it for me is that it's just 68 minutes long. It's just an hour and 8 minutes, right? And yet it covers so much thematic ground, though. But yeah, I am rooting for this to win Best Documentary Feature next year's Oscars. It's also going up for Best International Feature, but at the moment I'm rooting for Seed of the Secret Fig to win. But yeah, Dahomey is fantastic. Best Documentary of 2024. Number 4, Best Animated Feature of 2024. And I'm rooting for this to win Best Animated Feature next year's Oscars as well. The Wild Robot. This movie brought the man tears out of me, and at just the right time as well. But I just love that it just took what would have been just a simple premise about a robot who finds herself, because it's voiced by McGill Lupita Nyong'o, in this forest, and she has to communicate with animals, and she has to try to find a way back home. But yeah, she pretty much becomes a mom to this baby gosling, right? And then eventually there's this like mother-son relationship going on there with that, right? But yeah, where they took that relationship as well, boy, got me right in the feels, right? And in addition to just how emotionally heartfelt this show was, boy, the animation was great though, and I love how it really, like, how it also utilized a bit of, like, how to say, like, some Warner Brothers stuff as well, the kind of slapstick vibe you got that early on. I really dug how they did that, right? But yeah, call it a comeback of sorts for DreamWorks, right? Because not really the biggest fan of DreamWorks animated films, but this one, hands down, is one of the best I've seen, like, ever, in my opinion, right? Number 3. This kind of funny, right? But yeah, Ricardo, this is your number 1, but yeah, this is my number 3. Yep, I took the time, and I'm glad that I did. The Substance, by best horror that I have seen this year. I have to say I have seen this year because unfortunately I did not get a chance to watch Nosferatu, and I had a slot in my top 5 list for this. But yeah, The Substance, boy, was just fan-freaking-tastic, right? It just harkened back to good old-fashioned 80s body horror. Just the practical effects were on point though, but it's just the scathing social satire, just about beauty standards, right? Or just modern beauty standards, in today's world, right? Yeah, absolutely worked for me, right? You got great performances from both Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley, right? Who, somehow managed to top Demi, right? Yeah, Demi was going nuts and whatnot, right? And her transformation, yes, was a standard, right? But yeah, Margaret Qualley really holds this movie on her shoulders, boy, and just the stuff that she had to do and the transformations that she goes through in this film, though. Yeah, boy, it really, really worked for me, right? And like you, Ricardo, I was cracking up. I was laughing. I had a dumb smile on my face. You said not to eat while watching this, but for me, I ate before and then I jumped into this though. So yes, there was no retching involved though. But yeah, I was just watching this, and yes, there are some gross out moments for sure in this, right? And yeah, just how they just took the whole body horror genre, boy. Yeah, boy, they well, I saying D, right? But Coralie Fargate, right? If I got the surname wrong, forgive me, right? Yeah, shout out to her though, who wrote and directed this, but yeah, she killed it with this though. And this is her sophomore feature film, right? And she just killed it with this, right? But yes, this was blatant, in your face, raucous, sardonic, dark, twisted, effed up humor, just within the realms of body horror, and I loved every minute of this. So this was a great film, right? So now for the discussion, right? So y'all could kick back and relax, get some water or whatnot, right? I promise not to make this, a half-hour long affair or whatnot, right? But I have to explain myself with this, right? Because this will make sense in terms of how I rank these two films, right? So, for the first time, probably in a long while, I've had the challenge of ranking a sequel over a prequel, or vice versa. I was back and forth with these two, literally back and forth with these two up until this morning, the time I was talking about this, right? And a fun fact, I actually just got so pissed off, I actually ordered both on Blu-ray, right? Just because I just want these two films in my life, right? But here though is where this probably might end up if I decide to, maybe I might end up doing some video essay out of this though, because yeah, it's really a fascinating conversation to have, right? Yeah, which is better, a sequel or a prequel, right? I can't say because it's two different properties, right? So y'all probably know what I'm talking about by now, but I have to build the tension, right? So it's like this, right? Both shows, right, are not perfect films, right? There's flaws in each one of them, right? But as far as theatrical experiences, though, these are the two that I will always remember as far as this year goes, right? But in the back of my mind, I was still wondering which was better. There's some people who prefer the prequel, and there's some people who prefer the sequel. And just to get a little bit deeper now, the prequel actually underperformed at the box office, while the sequel actually just made, just made bank, right? But I was still wrestling as to which one was better. Now, I'm a film critic, nerdy side of me should pick the prequel, right? But then me just wanting just a amazing experience, amazing theatrical experience would go for the sequel, right? But now to get to the point of all this, right? So while I was deliberating on which one I should put, right, I was reminded of a film, and this film to me kind of perfectly is the perfect thing to look at in terms of just answering this question, right? A little film from we boy Francis Ford Coppola. I mean, yeah, he kind of, I didn't know what he was doing with Megalopolis, but he made this film, whatever. But yeah, this film is The Godfather Part 2, which gave us both a sequel and a prequel. The sequel being the continuation of Michael Corleone's story, and the prequel being Vito Corleone's story, right? Both elements, right? It's basically two movies in one, for those who haven't seen, right? But both elements work so well. They work in tandem, right? But here's the thing. Which of those two elements, the sequel or the prequel, stands out more. Yes, you got a great come-up story in terms of Vito and, played brilliantly by Robert De Niro and whatnot, right? And yes, seeing the villainization of Michael Corleone played brilliantly by Al Pacino and seeing his downfall was fascinating to watch, right? But at the same time, which one is the more memorable of the two? Which one is the one it give us the most impactful moments and lines and whatnot, right? So ultimately, when it all boils down to it, agree to disagree, it's the sequel. Because we saw Michael become the Godfather in part one, and now you're seeing his downfall in this one here. And the second one, well, the prequel now, seeing Vito now, is basically saying, here's what. We're gonna show you how Vito became the Godfather, how he became the way he is, right? But more in terms of how he saw morality and justice in this world, right? He's a mafia boss now. His solutions to things are usually with money or violence, right? So you had to see the beginnings of all that, right? But then quite brilliantly, that adds extra weight now on Michael, because some of these things, some of these life lessons that Vito learned, he probably knew from just talking with his dad, but probably he didn't even know. So he makes mistakes and he had to learn things the hard way. So it's like that, right? So to make a long story short, it's really the Michael story. Agree to disagree again, that really works, right? But you need the Vito story to justify why Michael is in the position he is right now. And even though, yes, there's Godfather Part 3, right? Which was nicely and brilliantly repackaged now as the Godfather Coda, the death of Michael Corleone, right? You could still see that the end of Part 2 is a great full stop. Or not so much a cliffhanger, but more of a full stop. Like the character goes through a particular arc, just like with Vito, but he goes through an arc and it stops at that point. You don't need to see Michael arrested or gunned down or whatnot. The point of the story is that the downfall, that's the end of his arc at that point. So you don't need to see anything else. And then, Godfather 3 or Godfather Coda is just, this is what happened afterwards, right? So to get them a point now with all of this, right? So while I do appreciate the prequel in terms of what it was setting up and the world building that it did, right? It's the sequel that I still rank over this, right? And slight spoiler, it was my favorite film of the past decade, right? But then going to the sequel now, it just managed to continue the story that we saw, and it just ramped things up on such a grand level though, and it just gave me so much moments that I will never forget. Number 2, Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga. Number 1, Dune Part 2. Right. So before we get to Dune, right? So Furiosa though, yes, it is a fantastic, character study in terms of, the character Furiosa, right? How she become the way she is, right? And what's so brilliant about this movie, right, is that because remember, it was supposed to be like, it was supposed to be like, it was supposed to be a two-parter from the beginning, right? It wasn't like some afterthought that George Miller had, right? But think about it, right? When you really think about it, right? If George had put out Furiosa first, it probably would have underperformed even more, right? Because you're introducing people to the Mad Max world again, right? But there's no Max, right? Even though he makes a very blink and miss appearance, right? So it would have been kind of off-putting to viewers, right? Especially diehard fans of the series, right? So you had to start off with the sequel. So that's why Fury Road works the way it was, right? But because Furiosa was such a standout character, it would make sense now for George to be like, all right, well, it would make sense for me now to go back and tell the story, because I want you all to understand it's supposed to be like that, right? So in other words, this duology is really a Furiosa story, a Furiosa duology, and not so much Mad Max. But Mad Max is the character we know, and we needed him to bring us back into the world so George now can introduce us to Furiosa. And this prequel here is just pretty much saying this is why she is the way she is, this is how she loses the arm, this is how she become the badass that she is. And you didn't mention it, Ricardo and CC all didn't mention it. It actually gave us a great performance, like a shockingly great performance from none other than Chris Hemsworth of all people, right? I mean, prosthetic nose aside though, boy, he was just such a great villain in this though. Funny, but just so insidious at the same time though, you know what I mean? He's funny and he's kind of a dope, but at the same time, when he goes off the rails though, he could just be cruel and brutal when he's ready, right? but I love that it just reflects the world that Furiosa is a part of. And what you see throughout this film is how Furiosa have to adapt and survive into this world, right? And that's why the final encounter between the two of them works so well, right? Especially with the implications as to what happened to Hemsworth's character as well, right? But it just kind of sets the path to what we will see now in Fury Road, right? Because yes, why we could watch Fury Road and appreciate it as an action film, right? As an action masterpiece, which it is. There's elements in it that, you'll just kind of watch and be like, oh, well, that's Mad Max stuff. But I love how Furious explore this, right? So slight spoiler, that biker gang that shows up halfway in Fury Road, they explain the origin of that. They actually explain where they came from. Like, what? Okay, right? And then even, Immortan Joe and, these characters and whatnot and Bullet Town and all these kind of things, it's explained. The world is set up. There's the world building in Furious, so it's great, right? So when you jump into Fury Road, if you were to watch it back to back, you don't need to be reminded or
I kind of analogy. Yeah, I kind of analogy I think is a kind of inverse 2001-2010 scenario. So 2010 kind of explains almost everything, while 2001 keeps everything kind of just mysterious and purely visual.
I think that's why I didn't like 2010 so much, because it
explains everything.
Yeah, like
right.
The beauty was not knowing and making your own judgments on what will happen in 2001, right? But yeah, so yeah, in terms of just world building and just this very, very, very clever, like using this film as just like, again, if you were to just so watch it like from Furiosa to Fury Road, right? Just basically reintroducing us to the world of Mad Max, but through a different character. That's really amazing. That's really bold, like not just filmmaking, but storytelling though, So shout out to George for just having the guts to put this out, right? But yeah, hands down, this is one of the best prequels ever made, right? That being said though, Dune Part 2, why it worked for me, right? It just took everything that we knew and love and we were expecting with a sequel to Dune from 2021 by, and just ramp things up though to a certain level though. Just that sequence with Paul just riding that sandworm has been burnt into my memory. Hans Zimmer's score for this though still gives me chills. Just seeing his transition to just being this naive kid who's been hearing about this Messiah stuff from his mom for so long, right? And yeah, just basically becoming the Messiah. But one thing I just love about his character arc in this though is that everybody, even right down to Chani, played by Zendaya, is pretty much trying to sway him to follow a particular path. Like, you're not the Messiah. Oh no, you are the Messiah. But I just love that Paul actually finds his own path, right? And is fueled by everything that he's been told or whispered, like was whispered into his ear. He found his own path, right? And yes, let me be real, he's a villain now, but still, just that arc though, and how he reached that point though, was just extraordinary to me, right? The filmmaking was just top notch though. The sound design, I always loved the sound design since the first film was great though. Villeneuve, I hope that this year he gets nominated for Best Director for this way, because yeah, he came through with he just knocked out the park yet again with this, right? But it was just the twists and turns that I loved though. The cinematography, which won an Oscar. Well, the first film won an Oscar for Best Cinematography. This could win as well too, because yes, the shots in this were breathtaking, right? Austin Butler, though, just a great villain as Fade Rotter, right? If I got the name wrong, forgive me, right? Just so menacing, right? And this, his introductory sequence alone, though, with that black and white thing, just burnt into my memory as well, right? Absolutely love it, right? But in no way am I saying that these two films, right, are like perfect, right? There's little narrative and character flaws here or there with both films, right? But I love both films though, because they just gave me like similar and different, experiences, right? In terms of just film and, just as a film and as stories, right? But if it's one film though that I will remember just for seeing in IMAX for the first time, and then watching it again in a smaller screen, and then watch it again in a smaller screen at home, it would be Dune Part 2. And I am happy to report, as a wrap up here, I purchased online through Amazon Furiosa and Dune Part 1 and 2, but you know what I mean? So I have to get these into my collection. I need those things in my life, right? And yeah, Dune Messiah, I can't wait, but I really, really can't wait. Will it be The Godfather Part 3 of the franchise, or will it be The Godfather Coda? Think about that for a sec. I hope that it is the latter, but yes, for me, Dune Part 2, best movie of 2024. I have a feeling that at some point in time, I'll be like, but Furiosa did this better, you know, but nah, like at the moment, as I'm talking here, as I'm recording this, yep, it's Dune Part 2. So that's it for me as far as best films of 2024.